In over 4 years of content, Genshin's story and lore has only grown and grown and grown in size. So it's no wonder that a lot of people, even those who actually try to pay attention to the story, gets confused over certain Teyvatian facts or just straight up misunderstands them. So I'll be rectifying some of the more obvious ones that I've seen people float around in this video, and who knows, if there are more misconceptions that people would give me in the comments, then I might make a part 2. And of course, spoiler alert for most Archon Quest content, especially Fontaine. Without further ado, the name's Leafy, and welcome back to Let's Talk Slow About Games, Genshin Edition. I'll start with a really simple one that was mentioned to me multiple times in these 2 videos that I made about Mondstadt lore, and that is the misconception that our resident hydromancer Mona is not someone who came from Mondstadt. I think this is all because it was mentioned that she has her own column in Fontaine's Steambird, which is basically their #1 newspaper. However, Mona herself confirmed in Fontaine's Archon Quest that she is indeed born in Mondstadt.
Well, I was born in Mondstadt, yes. My parents migrated to Dorman Port, and I traveled with the old hag for a while.
And there's even a chance that she was actually born in Dorman Port instead, which hopefully is released sometime soon. So we could very well have her guide us through the place if and when it does come around. Another Mona misconception is that a lot of people attribute her lack of money to the fact that she is just straight up broke, which is not the case at all. In fact, it almost feels like it's quite the literal opposite. However, this one is a lot more understandable because not only does she have an idol animation that straight up showcases her having no money, and that her voice line also implies that she frequently buys the cheapest meal since it saves her a lot of money. All of that, and because unless you played the 2.8 summer event, which was released almost 2.5 years ago at this point, then you probably wouldn't know that she actually is, in all technicality, pretty damn loaded. This woman has books that are worth almost 1 million mora each, and when we were given a vision of her house, everyone pretty much realized she actually lived in quite a decent abode. The problem that she has is what I call in my country as being eye hungry, while the West would just call it being an impulsive add to shopping cart kind of person. Mona would literally eye up expensive books or fancy astrolabes as the thing she would impulse buy on, and she for some reason have a lot of things to pay bills for. A bit more than what the average person has to pay other than their necessities. So it's actually kind of a wonder how she even still has money to pay rent and all that. And don't worry, you guys weren't the only ones to be caught off guard by Mona's financial status. Even Fischl couldn't believe it.
Your house? This is your house?
Very expensive.
Hey, I'm just occasionally out of mora, that's all. I never said I was a pauper. You're not? Oh, so what about those times I treated you to meals and had you over to my place for dinner?
The second character misconception that I still see quite often is people thinking that Chiori is someone who comes from Fontaine, which is very easily rectified by just looking at her character stories, which will tell you that she moved out of Inazuma when the Sakoku decree was about to be enacted, so she actually hasn't spent all that long living in Fontaine either. Mechanically, the game also doesn't place her as a character hailing from Fontaine. Not only does she not have any Numa or Osea mechanic in her skills to speak of, she also does not have the signature Fontainian dolphin jump. Similar to how Arlecchino is a figure that has big ties with Fontaine, the two of them simply aren't from the Nation of Justice. More character misconceptions for number 3, and this time it's kinda long, and it involves the connection between our PTSD queen, Miss Furina du Fontaine herself, and her Archon alter ego that is Focalors. There are still people who think that Furina is either a straight up clone, someone who Focalors chose from Egeria's people to replace her in public, or even just her literal daughter, and I spent some time trying to make an analogy that just straight up explains this. I don't think I did quite a good job, but this is kind of what I came up with. Here, you know Zhongli, right? He's Rex Lapis's normal human alter ego. Now, just imagine that these two actually exist separately, And then Rex Lapis literally took out his godly soul and memories out of human Zhongli and then putting it through the divinity meat grinder, which in Focalors' case was the giant sword of justice created within the Oratrice Mécanique d'Analyse Cardinale, annihilating the god soul and the existence of the element's archonhood, and leaving only the human form with their own memories and personality behind. That's essentially what happened in the Fontaine Archon quest. Furina had no powers to speak of, did not have any of Focalors' previous memories, and is actually not immortal by default since she was, well, human. Focalors just cursed her with immortality for very loving reasons, I'm sure, but
the person I always wanted to be. Anyway, so then I cursed her.
such is the price of trying to deceive the gods that gave godhood to all the supposed ruling gods in your own world, and only when Focalors finally took herself out was that curse finally lifted from Furina, and she now lives as a normal human being. So, for those of you who are still saying that Furina was overdramatic, was too much of a coward for someone who's supposed to be acting as the Archon, and should have told the truth to her people, come on man, cut her some slack. She had no memories to speak of, was practically born out of nowhere, and then the only other person who can fill her on things just said, hey, maintain being me for God knows how long. If you don't manage to do that until the time is right, then your whole nation and the people within will drown and dissolve into nothingness. And by the way, don't tell anyone. Lessens the risk of this whole thing failing in the first place. Any one of us would have shat our pants at the mere notion of being told any of that, let alone be the person responsible in making sure that said disaster does not happen. And then when it turns out that Furina was supposed to fail the task of pretending to be the Archon, but she didn't know any of that was supposed to happen, and people blame her when she panicked. Buddy, for all she knows, she just doomed her entire nation to death. Who wouldn't panic? This is why I'm still salty over how they chose to do her story quest. It's like just sweeping everything the people of Fontaine put her through under the rug. No apology, no trying to understand why she was traumatized, not even a word of acknowledgement from anyone in public regarding what it is that she had to do to keep them safe. Fontaine is, I think, still Genshin's best written arc to date, and is one of the best gacha storylines of recent times, but goddamn, did the Furina story quest resolution leave a sour taste in my ass. Okay, I'm getting too heated. Let's move on before I rant about this again. Oh crap, at this point this video might as well be a character lore misconception video. Well, cause number 4 is about how people think that Ningguang is everyone's boss in Liyue. This one is really caused by the fact that the Rite of Descension, which was a special Archon event that happens every year in Liyue, that we saw happening at the start of the game, was hosted by Ningguang, which gave everyone the look that Ningguang is the boss of the Liyue Qixing since she is the one representing all of Liyue in what is essentially a conversation facing their god, and is therefore the boss of everyone. However, the Rite of Descension is an event in which the host is always decided by rotating between the cast of Qixing members every year. The year prior to the game's happenings, Qixing was the one to host it, and it's been shown many times that not everyone answers to Ningguang. Beidou is infamously known for always butting heads with her. Yelan seems like she's more of a James Bond type of character working for the Ministry of Civil Affairs, and Ningguang even needed the Traveler to get Qixing to finally listen to someone when she's overworking herself during our second Lantern Rite. The Qixings themselves are 7 people who have control over various segregated sectors of Liyue's development, and I can only imagine that they do not overstep within each other's jurisdictions. Ningguang is revered for being the richest individual in Teyvat. The only person who seems to have this sort of revered status when it comes to being the boss of Liyue seems to be Uncle Tian, who even Yelan listens to unequivocally, even when she was sure that he was making questionable decisions. Though with that being said, being someone who can literally just buy anything she wants may count as being the boss of everyone in some way or another, so maybe that's some way to think of it in that kind of manner. Misconception number 4. The Traveler, or we, the players, canonically solos a lot of the weekly bosses or main villains that we end up fighting throughout the story. This is just straight up not true. There are far more of those villains that we beat either with other people's assistance or were just straight up beaten more by the capabilities of those other people rather than our own efforts. The only ones that we actually beat or outlasted with our own powers had only been Child and Senora. I say outlasted because eventually Child was basically beaten by his own foul legacy, and while the Shogun puppet had been the one to deliver the final blow to Senora, it was only because we won our duel against her, so in that sense, we did beat her fair and square without any assistance in that fight to literal death. And just for a quick summary, it's pretty easy to see how we didn't solo the rest. Andres' fight was just a test. We didn't really beat him or do anything equal to that. We fought the Valen with Venti, Jean, and Diluc. We power of friendship our way through Ajdaha using Zhongli's buddy old pal connections. We didn't fight the Shogun puppet. That battle was a retelling of what A went through against the puppet. We power of friendship our way through Scaramouche as well, this time by using Nahida's Akasha's powers and connecting with the Holo Sumeru or everyone who was wearing the Akasha terminal. The whale was the first time we had a legit sovereign fighting on our side, so we probably didn't have to do much in the first place. Then of course, Skirk just pockets the guy like it's no big deal. And Arlecchino, we were losing even when we were going 4v1 against her, and she still fathered us so hard she just straight up said, "Nah, y'all ain't beating me," and gave us the good old nice try pal pat on the shoulder. So far, I think that was legit the only time the Traveler actually felt pure fear throughout the entire story. Big flaming abyss dragon dude, we had to wreck it with mavuika and again, the power of Natlan friendship. Just to be clear, I'm not bragging on the whole power of friendship thing. They actually do a decent job of building each and every one of them within the lore, so it's not all just sudden bullshit. And yes, we matter, we help. Don't worry, it's not that we're useless. You know what? Let's keep this consistent and stay within the whole playable character theme and end this video with one misconception that's related to Venti, specifically his powers as an Archon and how people still think that he had a giant kill count during Mondstadt's portion of the Archon War, or more like Mondstadt's own power struggles. Look, Barbados is strong. He is an OG Archon after all, and he's had feats where he would literally shift whole ass mountaintops and just flung them around Teyvat. That's what a part of the Golden Archipelago is after all. He was able to terraform Mondstadt to become a habitable land for his people after he gained his Archonhood. His vision element comforts those who have experienced huge losses or traumas in their lives, and he definitely is powerful in ways we probably can't see just yet. But the one thing that he wasn't is being some battle warrior who slayed gods and enemies to a Rex Lapis or Beelzebul war. Guy was just a little wind sprite who inspired the people of Old Mondstadt to rebel against their tyrant oppressor and was worshipped for it. And it was only when two of the other, arguably more powerful gods of his nation, namely the Caribbean and Andreas, respectively died due to the rebels, and the other essentially forfeited their powers and chose to die quietly, and he also hated humans, so yeah, that part doesn't matter, did the people of Mondstadt look to him for an Archon, and all he can do is take the mantle of power since there really wasn't anyone else that could rightfully step up to it. There's a reason why there are no records in the game that straight up showcased Barbados as someone who would fight that way. Except for maybe Conria, since we know nothing about it just yet, man was pretty chill. A bunch of uber powerful witches and mages came up to him for a fight, and all he said was, let's just chill, yo. I talked about this more extensively in this other video I made about this Venti misconception, so feel free to check it out. And that's about it for this first list of Genshin story misconceptions. I don't know why it ended up being all about the playable characters. The script kinda devolved and rolled down to it eventually, so my bad. I am thinking of making a second part which focuses on other parts of the lore, such as the true nature of the connections between Nabu Malikata, King Deshret, and Rukkhadevata, how people think that the Archons distribute visions, the Sovereigns, and many more, so stay tuned for those ones. Hope you guys enjoyed the list so far. If you like it, then feel free to give it a like, and don't hesitate to leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Oh, and just as a quick plug, I'm thinking of streaming my Natlan exploration soon on my Twitch, so do give it a follow in case y'all wanna hang around once I get to that. Until the next video, the name's Leafy, and I'll see y'all next time. Sayonara.